Friends, let me talk to you now about the economy, the national economy, the GDP, the GNP, the GNI, that is the gross domestic product, the gross national product, the gross national income, the balance of foreign trade, etc., in general. And about the Indian economy in particular, I'll be talking to you in part 2, or otherwise it becomes too lengthy for you to watch this video. So economy in general, that is in a layman's language, it means the financial position. And this financial position, it can be of a person, of a company, of an industry, or a sector, a region, a country, etc. And when we talk of the economy of a country, then there's so many organs, so many units, so many agents are involved. So it refers to the national economy, therefore refers to the production, distribution, trade, consumption of goods and services by different agents or groups or units of the country. So the economic agents, that is the economic units or organs participating in this economy of a country, it can be individuals, the businesses, organizations, industries and governments. And a given economy of a country, again, it depends on various factors. The main factors like the country's culture, values, education, the technological evolution, the political structure, or say the governmental structure, the legal system of that country, etc. Also, it depends on the geography of the country, the resources, and many other factors. So these factors, they set the conditions and the parameters in which the economy of a country functions. In other words, the economy does not stand alone, and the economic activity is triggered by the production, which uses the resources, the labor and the capital. So this economy of a country has changed over time due to various factors, due to number one, the technology, resulting in the automation, the increased productions, the reduction of costs, etc. And also it has undergone a change due to the innovation or the R&D with new products, new services, processes, the expanding markets, e-commerce, intellectual property, etc., coming into existence. And there are two types of economy basically. They are one, the market-based economy and the command-based economy. The market-based economy is one where goods and services are produced and exchanged according to the demand and supply between the participants, that is the economic agents, by barter or a medium of exchange. So the medium of exchange, accepted by credit or debit. So the medium of exchange may be a unit of currency. And the other one is the command-based economy. So it is one where the political authorities or the government authorities, they directly control what is produced and how it is to be sold to whom or how and in what ratio, in what proportion, in what manner, in what pattern it is to be distributed. So while all professions, occupations, production, distribution, exchange, and the consumption of goods and services, while they practically contribute to the economy of a country, the factors like the consumption, the savings, and investment, they are the variable components in the economy which determine in turn the macroeconomic equilibrium. So in modern times, the term real economy is used to denote the actual production of goods and services as against the paper economy or say the nominal economy. So the real economy actually means the inflation adjusted nominal economy. So nominal economy after the adjustment of inflation, it becomes the real economy. And with the spread of internet technology as a mass media, and communication medium, especially after the year 2000 2001. Different types of economies and the economic models, they are given importance because of the growing e-commerce and the electronic businesses. And this economy also has undergone through various phases. The economy has developed mainly through the industrial revolution and also through the activities, important activities, major activities like even mining, construction, the manufacturing industries, R&D activities, the high-end services, etc., etc. High-end services like internet, e-trading, etc. And the primary stage of economy, it involves the extraction and production of the raw materials, and the secondary stage of economy involves the transformation of the raw material or the intermediate materials into the finished goods. And the third stage of economy, it involves the provision of services to the consumers and to the businesses, such as the repairs, maintenance, marketing, banking, accounting, etc., etc. And the fourth phase of economy, it involves the research and development needed to produce the products from the resources. And the sectors of the developed economy, it also includes the additional sectors like your government sector services, the services provided by government like public health, security, hospitals, schools, libraries, it may be museums, parks and gardens, the judiciary services, etc. So the GDP, the gross domestic product, is the important factor that reveals the national economy, the health of the country, the economic health of that country, or say the economy of a country. So this gross domestic product GDP, it is the monetary value or it is a reference point of all, it is the sum total of the monetary value of all the finished goods and also the services that are made within a country. During a specified period, maybe a quarter or year or whatever it is. So it is the monetary value of all finished goods and services made within a particular period. And though GDP is typically calculated on the annual basis, it's sometimes calculated on a quarterly basis as well, where it is of use to us. So this GDP, it provides an economic snapshot of a country and it is used to estimate the size of the economy and the GDP growth rate, the economy growth rate. So GDP is a key tool to guide the policymakers, the investors, the businesses in decision making process. So GDP calculation again has got three approaches: the expenditure approach, the production approach, and the income approach. The calculation of a country's GDP, it takes into account or it encompasses all private and the public consumption. The government outlays means government expenditure on its routine activities on various projects, the infrastructure on capital items. Similarly, the investments, additions to the private inventories, the paid in construction costs, and more importantly, the foreign balance of trade. So the foreign balance of trade means it is the difference between the revenue on exports and the cost incurred on imports. The difference between the revenue on exports, revenue generated on export, and the cost incurred on the imports. So the foreign balance of trade is very, very important. The GDP of a country tends to increase when the total value of the goods and services exported. So when it exceeds the total value of the imports of a country. So then we say there is a trade surplus. This situation is called trade surplus and the GDP naturally increases. And if on the other hand the opposite situation occurs, we call this situation as trade deficit. So in this situation, the GDP of a country tends to decrease. There are various other factors which we would like to know here, understand here. Nominal GDP, as I said, it is the GDP evaluated at the current market prices. Real GDP is an inflation adjusted measure. GDP growth rate, it is the comparison of one quarter's GDP with the previous quarter or 1 year's GDP to the previous year expressed in terms of percentage in order to measure how fast the economy of the country is growing. And there is also another very important factor, namely the GDP per capita. So GDP per capita, it is the GDP of that country divided by the population of that country. So that is GDP per person. So this is a very useful way to compare the GDP data between various countries. See, although GDP is a widely used metric, a very important number, there are other ways of measuring the economic growth of a country. GDP measures the economic activity within the physical borders of a country, whether the producers or the revenue generators are native to that country or foreign owned entities. So whether the consumption or revenue generation, so selling or purchasing, whether it pertains to the people who are native to that country or otherwise, as long as it occurs within the territories of that country, it takes into account that is GDP. So the gross national product, on the other hand, GNP. So this is a measurement of the overall production of the persons, the citizens or the corporations native to that country only, including those based abroad. So GNP therefore excludes the domestic production by the foreigners. And another very important factor that we should know is the GNI, gross national income. So this is another measure of economic growth, is the sum of all incomes earned by the citizens or the nationals of a country, whether economic activity takes place within that country or abroad. So in the global economy, GNI, this is considered as potentially a better metric to know the overall economic health of a country than GDP. And there is also criticism on GDP. There are some drawbacks in using GDP as an indicator of the economy because, in addition to the lack of timeliness, it does not account for several unofficial income sources. So GDP, it relies only on the official data. So it does not take into account the extent of informal economic activities. GDP fails to quantify the value of under the table employment, the block market activity, the volunteer work, the household work, and the household production, which can be of a very significant value in some countries. So the summary, or what we say the bottom line of our discussion, is that GDP, more or less, it enables the policymakers, the investors, the financial institutions, the central banks to judge whether the economy is contracting or expanding, whether the country's economy needs a boost or restraint, whether there is a threat such as the recession or inflation, etc. And in recent decades, the governments have also created various modifications to the formula, the calculation, GDP calculation formula, taking into account the intangible assets, etc., in order to increase the GDP